Hey guys. Tonight we're heading somewhere so cold. Even your frozen leftovers would file a complaint. Imagine yourself in medieval Russia, where winter wasn't a season. It was a full-time tyrant. Temperatures dropped so low that even the stars seemed to shiver. The air bites sharper than a sarcastic remark. And your breath turns into little ghosts that vanish before you can say brr. You're about to find out how people back then, peasants, nobles, monks, and wanderers, actually managed to sleep without turning into human icicles. And trust me, it wasn't exactly cozy. You'd think twice before complaining about a cold blanket again. Because the folks in medieval Russia didn't have heating, double-glazed windows, or even proper insulation. Just raw survival instinct, thick fur, and faith that morning would come. You probably wouldn't survive a single night, unless you were half bare. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking through a small Russian village, the ground buried under layers of snow so thick it swallows your boots. The houses, made of rough logs, crouch low like beasts trying to escape the wind. Smoke seeps from crooked chimneys, twisting into the iron-gray sky. Inside one of those huts, a single flame flickers behind a frosted window, someone still awake, fighting the cold one ember at a time. When you step in, your face stings from the sudden shift of temperature. The heat isn't much, just enough to melt the frost on your eyelashes. The scent of smoke and damp wood fills the air. In the corner, a family huddles together under heavy furs, mother, father, 2 children, and a baby wrapped tighter than a cabbage roll. You notice the stove, massive, almost the size of a bed, its surface wide enough for someone to actually sleep on. They call it a pechka. To the medieval Russian peasant, it wasn't just a stove. It was life itself. It cooked their meals, dried their clothes, and, on nights like this, kept them alive. Some even slept directly on top of it, because the stone absorbed heat during the day and released it slowly through the night. It was the warmest place in the house, and the most coveted. You can picture it. Grandpa claiming the top of the stove as his kingdom, snoring softly as the rest of the family squeezes below. Each layer of warmth shared like a secret. Even the family cat curls up on his chest. Because everyone, humans and animals alike, knew that warmth meant survival. The wind outside moans through the cracks in the wooden walls, sounding almost alive. It reminds you of the noise from an old air conditioner trying to die gracefully. Except this one's made of pure winter fury. Yet inside, under the flicker of firelight, the scene feels strangely peaceful. The cold might own the land, but the warmth of people owns the night. You glance at the single window. Ice crystals have formed lace-like patterns across it, turning the outside world into a blurry dreamscape. The moon is just a smudge behind the frost. You can't hear much, just the occasional pop from the wood in the stove and the steady breathing of the family. It's hypnotic. In this silence, you realize something profound. Medieval Russians didn't fight the cold, they made peace with it. They treated it like an old, grumpy neighbor who wouldn't move away. You could complain, but it wouldn't change a thing. Better to build your house thick, your clothes thicker, and your spirit thicker still. Their nights were long, sometimes 16 hours of darkness. So they adapted. They developed what historians later called segmented sleep. They'd sleep for a few hours, wake in the middle of the night, tend the fire, say a prayer, maybe share a quiet story, then drift back to sleep until dawn. It wasn't insomnia, it was survival dressed as routine. There's an odd beauty to it, isn't there? The kind of rhythm that makes time slow down. That makes a night feel endless but safe. Somewhere in that rhythm, you imagine yourself lying beside the warm stove, wrapped in layers of wool and fur, your toes finally thawing, your body surrendering to the steady pulse of heat. And maybe, just maybe, you'd start to understand how they did it. How entire generations slept through winters that could kill a man in his dreams. They didn't conquer the cold. They befriended it. You close your eyes. The sound of the wind fades. The warmth of the stove seeps into your bones. And for the first time tonight, the frozen silence feels almost kind. The wooden house creaks as if it's alive, complaining quietly against the weight of the snow pressing down on its roof. You lie there, half dreaming, half listening, and realize that in medieval Russia, the very walls of your home were your armor against death. The cold outside doesn't knock politely, it claws. So every log, every plank, every layer of moss stuffed between the cracks matters. This isn't a cozy cabin from a travel vlog. It's a fortress, built not for comfort, but for survival. The wood itself, thick pine or sturdy birch, was chosen because it breathed. That meant it could trap air and create a thin barrier of warmth between the freezing winds and your fragile human body. You could say the Russians were early inventors of double insulation, only without the engineering degree or safety codes. The door is low. You have to duck to enter. Partly because people were shorter back then, but mostly because small doorways trapped heat. Once inside, you're hit by a scent mix of smoke, animal fur, and humanity. It's intense, but you get used to it, like your grandma's old coat closet times 10. The main room is everything: kitchen, dining hall, bedroom, nursery, and occasionally, stable. The ceiling is low, the walls close, and the flicker of the single oil lamp casts golden patches on the timber. You can almost hear the house breathe, a symphony of settling wood. Wind pushing through tiny gaps, and the quiet rustle of people turning in their sleep. You glance toward the stove again. Its stone belly still glows faintly red. The top is where warmth reigns. But space is limited, so there's a hierarchy: elders and infants closest to the heat. Everyone else arranged like concentric circles of survival. And if you're a guest? Well, you'd better bring a gift, or prepare to share a corner near the door, where the wind sneaks in like an uninvited ghost. The medieval Russian house wasn't built with elegance in mind. It was more like a defensive bunker disguised as a home. Some peasants even sealed their windows entirely during the harshest months. Natural light? Overrated. Warmth was the real luxury. In the dim half-darkness, they relied on memory more than sight. Every object had its place. Every creak had its meaning. You imagine yourself trying to sleep in that room. The straw mattress pokes through the thin linen sheet. The air smells of ash and wool. And the flicker of fire dances across the beams above you. You turn, you shift, and you feel the presence of life all around you. your family breathing beside you. The faint snore of someone dreaming about spring. Maybe even the shuffle of a chicken under the bench. Yes, sometimes the livestock stayed indoors too. A walking, clucking heater, if you will. It's strange, though, despite the discomfort. There's something deeply human about it. You're never alone. Every sound, every breath connects you to the people around you. In a world where the cold could kill in minutes, intimacy wasn't optional, it was mandatory. Historians still debate whether this kind of communal living brought people closer or slowly drove them mad. But when your world is covered in snow for 6 months straight, madness and warmth can start to look awfully similar. The wood stove pops again, scattering a brief spark into the air. You flinch, but the family doesn't move, they're used to it. One child rolls over, half asleep, and mumbles something about a bear. The mother hums a soft tune, her voice almost melting into the crackle of the fire. It's not a lullaby from joy, but from endurance. You trace your fingers along the wooden wall beside you. It's smooth, worn by years of touch, generations before you leaning here, whispering prayers, listening to the same winter winds. The grain of the wood feels warm, alive. This isn't just shelter, it's a record of survival etched in rings and resin. Outside, the blizzard howls again. You can't see it, but you can sense it, the pressure, the vibration through the floorboards. Yet inside, everything holds steady. The house groans but doesn't yield. The people sleep but don't shiver. It's a delicate truce between wood and wind, fire and frost. You close your eyes again, and your mind wanders, imagining the builders of this wooden fortress. They didn't have blueprints or metal nails, only axes, faith, and frostbitten hands. Each log was carved by someone who knew the stakes: build strong or die frozen. Every beam locked perfectly into place, each joint sealed with moss and clay, forming a cocoon where warmth could linger a little longer. And so, you rest within that cocoon too. The logs creak like old voices murmuring stories from centuries past. The warmth spreads slowly, like honey poured over cold skin. Somewhere outside, the storm continues its endless tantrum. But inside this fortress of wood and willpower, you breathe, safe for now. If you listen carefully, the house itself seems to whisper, low, steady hum. Sleep, little spark. The cold can wait. You wake, or maybe you never really slept. The room is still wrapped in shadows, but you can feel the warmth pulsing softly from the stove. Someone has stirred the embers during the night, feeding them with another log. And that small act of survival lets everyone else drift between sleep and waking dreams. The air smells faintly of smoke and wool. The quiet rhythm of breathing surrounds you, slow, steady, almost musical. And then you realize, you're not sleeping alone. Not even close. In medieval Russia, the concept of personal space didn't exist the way it does now. Back then, warmth was the real currency. And the best way to keep it was by sharing. Families slept in tight clusters, parents, children, sometimes grandparents, even the occasional guest if there was room. You could say it was humanity's earliest version of a group chat. Except instead of messages, you exchanged body heat. The logic was simple and brutally practical. The more bodies, the more warmth. Blankets were expensive, furs, even more so. So instead of wasting the precious heat your body produced, you shared it. The walls might be made of logs, but the insulation came from people. You turn your head and see the child beside you, his breath fogging in the dim light. The mother's arm drapes protectively over him, while the father's snores rumble like a small earthquake. There's a faint scratching under the bench, probably the family dog curling tighter into its corner, chasing the same warmth you are. If you listen long enough, you can distinguish each sound: the sigh of someone turning over, the crackle of a burning log, the drip of melting frost near the stove. All these little noises weave together into something strangely comforting, a lullaby made of survival. Of course, not everyone agreed it was ideal. Some travelers from Western Europe who visited medieval Russia wrote about this with thinly veiled horror. They described peasants sleeping in piles, tangled together with children, animals, and sometimes even chickens, because why waste heat when you could share it with a hen? You might laugh, but for those villagers, that was simply life. A warm chicken was better than a cold night. You shift slightly, trying to find space for your arm, and realize that every inch of the bench is occupied. It's almost comical, your shoulder pressed to someone's back, your feet touching another's, a toddler's hand resting on your sleeve. You want to move, but there's nowhere to go. So you surrender to it, the closeness, the shared breathing, the steady heartbeat of human life pressing against yours. There's a strange intimacy in it, one that modern people rarely experience, the kind that breaks down the illusion of separateness. In this frozen world, warmth isn't just physical, it's emotional. Each shared breath is a quiet reminder: we survived together. Or not at all. Historians still argue about whether this nightly closeness helped strengthen family bonds or made privacy disappear entirely. Maybe both. Maybe in those long winters, love and exhaustion were indistinguishable. But whatever the case, it worked. People didn't freeze, and that was victory enough. Some nights, families would even share the same sleeping platform, an enormous wooden structure near the stove where everyone fit like puzzle pieces. The bedding was simple: straw, wool, maybe a few furs if they were lucky. No pillows, no plush comforters, no bedtime stories, unless you count the ones whispered half asleep between sighs and yawns. You imagine the conversations, soft voices in the dark. Someone asking if the storm will stop by morning. Someone else murmuring that spring will come soon. Maybe a joke, half whispered, to make the children giggle before they drift off. Humor, after all, was another form of warmth. The wind outside moans again, sliding its icy fingers through the cracks of the walls. It's the sound of a beast that knows it can't quite reach you. Inside, the glow from the stove grows duller, shifting from orange to deep red. The air cools, but the nest of bodies holds steady. You think about how fragile it all is, one fire away from warmth, one mistake away from frostbite. And yet, somehow, these people made it through centuries like this. No central heating, no thick glass windows, no thermostats, just instinct, community, and endurance. Maybe there's a lesson here. Maybe warmth isn't something you create, it's something you share. You stretch your hand toward the stove and feel the faint heat brushing your fingers. It's enough. Outside, snow keeps falling in silence, erasing the world beyond the window. But in this room, there's life, small, imperfect, but stubbornly alive. Someone stirs beside you. The child murmurs in his sleep, perhaps dreaming of a world without winter. You smile to yourself and think, even in the harshest cold, humans always find a way to make warmth feel like home. You close your eyes again. The scent of smoke and skin blending together. The rhythm of shared breathing lulling you deeper. Somewhere between waking and dreaming, you hear a whisper in your mind, soft, amused, maybe from the storyteller inside you. You probably wouldn't survive this night alone. But luckily, you never had to. The morning never really comes here. It just turns the darkness into a lighter shade of gray. The room is still half asleep. Quiet except for the faint hiss of the stove. The air smells like ashes, old bread, and something deeply human. You stretch, hearing your joints crack, and for a moment, you can almost forget that the world outside is made entirely of ice. That stove, the pechka, isn't just the heart of the house, it's the spine, the lungs, and maybe even the soul. You start to understand why Russian peasants built their entire lives around it. The pechka wasn't simply a place to cook. It was a life support system designed by desperation and perfected by experience. It stands like a stone beast in the center of the room. Its body carved from clay and brick. Its mouth blackened by decades of fire. The top surface is wide, flat, and perfectly warm. The closest thing to paradise in a winter that tries to kill you daily. To sleep on the pechka was a privilege. If you were old, sick, or simply the fastest to claim it, that spot was yours. You sit up and touch the edge of it. The warmth radiates through your palm. Deep and steady. It's not hot, not scorching, just alive. You can almost hear it breathe. The embers deep inside glow faintly like the heartbeats of something ancient and kind. In this house, everything orbits the stove. Food simmers slowly in clay pots tucked into its belly. Wet boots dry against its side. Children climb onto it like monkeys. Their laughter echoing through the smoky air. Even the family cat, who probably believes it owns the place, stretches across the top like royalty. But here's the secret most people never knew. The pechka wasn't just warmth, it was ingenuity. Its design was both art and survival science. The fire burned inside a long, winding chamber that trapped heat for hours, releasing it slowly into the clay. The smoke followed a twisting path before escaping through the chimney, meaning not a single spark of warmth went to waste. Imagine a medieval version of geothermal heating, just with more soot and fewer safety standards. You can almost admire it like an ancient engineer would. There's beauty in its simplicity. No electricity, no moving parts, just brick, air, and fire working together to cheat death one night at a time. Sometimes, people even slept inside it, well, not in the flames, obviously, but in the empty space above where the fire had burned out. When the embers cooled, the chamber still radiated heat for hours. It was like crawling into the belly of a sleeping dragon. You'd slide in, curl up, and feel the gentle warmth hug your bones. Claustrophobic? Absolutely. But better claustrophobic than frozen. There's an old Russian saying that translates roughly to, "The stove feeds you, warms you, and heals you." And it's true. Some even believed the pechka had a spirit of its own, a quiet guardian that protected the home. Families would whisper a small blessing before lighting it, treating it almost like a household god. You run your hand along the clay again, tracing the tiny cracks where the heat has split the surface. Each fracture tells a story. How many winters did this stove endure? How many people leaned against it, desperate for warmth, whispering prayers through chattering teeth? You think of the man who built it, hands raw, eyes watering from the smoke, breath fogging in the icy air. Maybe he built it not just for himself but for the generations that would follow. Because in this world, survival was a form of inheritance. You didn't pass down wealth, you passed down warmth. Outside, the wind growls like a hungry animal. The frost has crept higher along the window, forming pale veins that crawl across the glass. You can almost imagine the cold watching, waiting for the fire to die. But the pechka doesn't falter. It glows, defiant. A child stirs on top of it, rolling over and sighing. The mother gets up, throws on her wool shawl, and quietly opens the stove's mouth. Sparks leap out like startled fireflies. She feeds it a few small logs and whispers something soft, perhaps to herself, perhaps to the fire. It's a tender ritual, performed thousands of times before and after this moment. You watch as the flames catch. The glow deepens, and the warmth thickens in the air. The room slowly wakes again. The dog yawns. The father groans. Someone laughs sleepily. Life resumes. The stove hums, a low, contented sound that seems to say, "See, we made it through another night." Historians still debate where the exact design of the pechka came from, whether it evolved from older Finnish models or was purely Russian innovation born of necessity. But one thing's certain, no other culture treated a stove quite like this. It wasn't an appliance, it was family. You lean back against the wall, feeling the radiating heat kiss your skin. Outside, the snowstorm keeps roaring, relentless and infinite. But in here, there's an island of warmth, a small victory against a continent of cold. And you can't help but smile at the thought that somewhere, in another century, someone else might be doing the same, feeding their fire, curling close, and whispering thanks to the stove that keeps them alive. The flicker of the flames reflects in your eyes. Soft and rhythmic, the warmth seeps deeper, slower, calmer, until the world beyond these walls feels like nothing but a fading dream. The fire hums low and steady now, the orange glow smearing faint halos across the wooden beams. The scent of smoke clings to your clothes, to your hair, to the air itself. The family's stirring, shaking off sleep like frost from branches. Outside, snowflakes fall soundlessly, but you can feel their cold pressing through the walls, an invisible weight reminding everyone that comfort here is temporary. The woman pulls back the layers of fur and straw that served as their bed. You blink, realizing it's not really a bed at all, but a makeshift nest of whatever could keep a body off the icy floor. Hay, straw, maybe dry reeds if they were lucky. They crinkle under her hands, releasing a smell both earthy and sharp, half barn, half life. These hay beds weren't luxurious. Not even close. They were functional, rough, and a little itchy. But they were miracles in their own right. Because in medieval Russia, hay was insulation, mattress, and sometimes pillow all in one. You can almost imagine the ritual. In the evening, someone spreading a fresh layer of straw, patting it down, shaking out the frost from yesterday's bedding. maybe even warming it a bit near the stove before laying it out again. You sit there, watching her smooth the straw with slow, practiced movements. Then come the blankets, thick pelts of wolf, bear, or deer, whatever the family could trade or trap. The furs are heavy and uneven, stitched from scraps, edges rough but dense enough to trap heat like a promise. You run your fingers over one of them. It's coarse at first touch, but underneath, softer than you expect, the smell of animal oil lingers. Not unpleasant, just primal, its warmth made visible, survival turned into texture. The children yawn and crawl toward the stove again, dragging their smaller pelts with them. Their cheeks are flushed, eyes still glazed from sleep. They don't complain. There's no, "it's too hard," or "too scratchy." In this world, softness is a myth, and endurance is routine. The father steps outside, and for a brief second, the cold rushes in. It bites your face instantly, stings your lungs. You gasp before he slams the door shut again. That single breath of frozen air is enough to remind you how fragile this little world of warmth really is. Inside, the hay creaks, the furs ripple slightly, and everything returns to its slow rhythm. You think about how strange it is, sleeping in straw, surrounded by animal skins, the scent of smoke and people blending together. And yet, there's a kind of comfort to it. Everything here has a story. Every pelt came from a hunt. Every handful of straw from a field worked by hand. Each layer of bedding carries the memory of labor, of life exchanged for one more night of rest. Historians say peasants would sometimes mix herbs or pine needles into their hay to keep insects away and add a faint, clean scent. You imagine that soft, resinous smell filling the room, a primitive kind of aromatherapy that no one thought of as luxury. Just practicality with a hint of grace. And it wasn't only peasants. Even nobles, in their stone halls, relied on furs and hay-stuffed mattresses. Silk sheets might have draped the top. But beneath it all, the same idea held true. Nature keeps you alive, not decoration. You lie back for a moment, feeling the texture of it, the rustle of straw beneath you, the weight of fur across your chest, the faint tickle of a loose hair against your cheek. It's not comfortable in the modern sense, but it's grounding. You feel the earth in it, the animals, the seasons. It's like sleeping inside the memory of the world itself. And yet, even here, humor sneaks in. You can almost hear some long-dead villager grumbling about the hay poking me again, while another replies, "At least it's not the snow." Medieval people had jokes too. You know, especially about the cold. Some chroniclers noted that Russians often laughed at winter's cruelty, as if mocking it could dull its teeth. Maybe that's why they survived it, through laughter, not defiance. The child giggles suddenly, chasing a stray piece of straw floating in the air. The mother smiles, half tired, and tucks him back under the fur. She hums something soft, a melody older than memory. Low and slow, the kind of tune that sounds like the heartbeat of the house itself. Outside, the world remains white and merciless. The snow thickens. The cold presses its face against the glass. But in here, the fire glows. The hay crackles faintly, and time stands still. You exhale, long and slow. The air from your lungs turns into a faint mist above your chest. You think about your own bed, your mattress, your heating, your comfort, and you realize just how fragile luxury is. Back then, warmth wasn't a given, it was earned every single night. And as you lie there, half wrapped in fur and imagination, you can't help but smile. Because even amid the frost, the itch of straw, and the faint stink of smoke, something about this place feels profoundly human. You pull the fur closer to your chin, listen to the faint crackle of fire, and think, if survival had a sound, this would be it. The fire has dimmed again, its glow pulsing faintly like the last ember of a dream. You open your eyes to see the world wrapped in shades of brown and gold. The light catching the edges of fur and wood. The scent of smoke clings to everything, the ceiling, the straw, even your skin. It's not unpleasant anymore, it's part of the air you breathe. The fabric of survival. You sit up slowly, pulling a thick pelt around your shoulders. It's heavier than it looks, some kind of sheep or maybe wolf. You can't tell anymore. The fur's been patched and restitched so many times it's more history than hide. The edges are lined with frost where breath has condensed overnight. You shake it off and wrap it tighter. This is how medieval Russians fought the cold, with fur and faith. Not hope, not optimism, faith. Faith that the sun would return. Faith that the fire wouldn't die. Faith that the saints, or maybe just dumb luck, would keep them breathing until spring. There's something deeply ritualistic about it. Before bed, families would bless the fire. Some would cross themselves 3 times and whisper a small prayer. Others would simply stare into the flames until their eyes blurred, whispering the names of lost ones. As if the fire could carry messages into the dark. In a world where frost could kill faster than hunger, warmth was sacred. Fire wasn't just physics, it was theology. The church taught that warmth was a sign of divine mercy. And cold? Cold was the test of the soul. To endure the winter without losing your faith meant you were worthy of the resurrection of spring. You pull the fur tighter, feeling its weight settle on your shoulders. It's like wearing the memory of an animal that once braved this same snow. The villagers believed the spirit of the animal lingered in the pelt, protecting its wearer, so they treated their furs with a strange reverence, not fashion, but companionship. There's a quiet moment when you can almost sense it yourself. The echo of the beast whose skin now keeps you alive. Its warmth becomes your warmth. Its life becomes your shield. You whisper a thank you. Not because anyone told you to, but because it feels right. Across the room, the family does their morning ritual. The father crouches near the stove, feeding it fresh wood. The mother crosses herself, murmuring a line from an old Orthodox hymn, "Keep us warm, O Lord, as you warm the earth." The children mimic her gesture. Clumsy but sincere. It's beautiful. In a rough, practical way, their prayers aren't for riches or glory, just another night of sleep without frostbite. Historians still debate how much of this was true belief and how much was habit. But in medieval Russia, habit was belief. When you live on the edge of survival, every repeated act becomes holy. Lighting the fire, mending the furs, whispering a name before sleep, it all blends together into one unbroken prayer. You stand, testing the floorboards beneath your bare feet. They're cold, biting, but not unbearable. The fur around your body feels like armor. You take a step, then another, toward the small icon shelf on the wall, a painted image of Christ and the Virgin Mary. their faces dulled by smoke. A single candle flickers before them, its flame trembling in the draft. You can almost feel their gaze watching over the room, steady and silent. It's strange, this coexistence of the spiritual and the practical. The villagers didn't separate them. You didn't choose between fire and faith, you needed both. The stove kept your body alive. The prayer kept your spirit from freezing too. Outside, the wind rises again, carrying a low, haunting whistle. The sound threads through the cracks of the walls, almost like a voice. Some called it the whisper of the frost demon, Morosko. In old Russian folklore, he was both cruel and generous. If you respected him, he gave you mild weather and safe passage. If you mocked him or forgot your offerings, he would freeze you where you stood. You think about that for a moment. How even the cold itself had to be personified, given a face, a story, because when nature is trying to kill you, you can't just ignore it. You have to make it part of your world. Something you can reason with, pray to, or blame. You glance at the furs again, the layers stacked by the stove. Drying from yesterday's snow, they look like the hides of fallen soldiers. Resting after battle, you wonder how many winters they've seen, how many storms they've endured. Someone behind you sneezes, and the whole family laughs quietly. It's a small sound, but it cuts through the cold like sunlight. For a moment, you feel what they must have felt, this fragile warmth, born from fur and faith, flickering but unbroken. You lie back down, pulling the fur up to your chin. The inside smells faintly of smoke and animal fat, but it's comforting now, familiar. Your eyelids grow heavy, and your mind drifts between prayers and dreams. The wind outside hisses, frustrated that it can't reach you. Inside, the stove hums, the icons glow faintly, and your heart slows to match the rhythm of the house. And just before you fall asleep again, you think, maybe warmth isn't only what we make, maybe it's what we believe in. The storm hasn't stopped, it just learned how to whisper instead of roar. The wind outside still claws at the walls, but inside, the warmth clings stubbornly to the air. You sit beside the stove again, watching the mother pour something clear into a small wooden cup. She takes a sip, shivers, then smiles, a thin, knowing smile that says, "Yes, this helps." You already know what it is. Vodka, Russia's liquid armor against winter. Though the word vodka wouldn't officially appear for centuries, the drink itself, bread wine, as they called it, was already flowing through medieval veins. It wasn't just a comfort, it was medicine, courage, and sometimes prayer in a bottle. You can imagine the first person to invent it. Probably someone so cold they looked at a pile of fermented rye and thought, what if I could drink the fire instead? You take a cautious sip. The liquid burns your throat, then spreads through your chest like liquid sunlight. It's the kind of warmth that feels both holy and slightly dangerous, like hugging a saint who might also punch you. The room grows softer, the edges blur, and suddenly, the cold feels less personal. Vodka, of course, wasn't only about survival, it was also about connection. People didn't drink alone, they drank together. In every Russian village, winter nights became little gatherings around the stove, where stories and songs mixed with the smell of smoke and fermented grain. The drink loosened tongues and lifted spirits. It made the darkness tolerable, the frost almost poetic. You watch as the father joins in, his face still half asleep but already smiling. He raises his cup and mutters something that sounds like a toast. Maybe it's to the fire. Maybe to survival. Maybe just to making it through another night without freezing. Everyone drinks. Even the grandmother, wrapped in her shawl like a snowdrift, takes a tiny sip and laughs. The sound fills the room like a crack in the ice, fragile, bright, human. There's a saying in old Russia, without vodka, winter lasts forever. You chuckle at that, though part of you suspects it's less a joke and more an ancient coping mechanism. The drink didn't just warm the body, it thawed the soul. It made people talk when silence felt too heavy. Made them remember the sun when it had been gone for months. Still, the peasants were careful. Too much liquid fire, and the night could turn dangerous. The cold didn't forgive drunkenness. A man who fell asleep outside after too many toasts might never wake again. In Russia, you didn't drink to escape winter, you drank to negotiate with it. You imagine the sound of their laughter growing louder as the night deepens. Someone starts telling a story, an old folktale about Morosco, the frost spirit, who tests travelers by freezing their eyelashes and whispering riddles into the wind. In the tale, the clever one survives by offering him a drink of vodka. The frost spirit, amused, lets the man live. The moral? Even winter respects good hospitality. You laugh quietly to yourself. There's always truth in their stories. Tucked behind the humor. To live here, you needed wit as much as strength. You needed to know when to laugh, when to drink, when to pray, and when to simply endure. The children are half asleep now, curled under furs, their cheeks pink from the stove's warmth. The adults speak in softer tones, voices trailing off into murmurs. The grandmother hums something, an old drinking song turned lullaby. It's oddly gentle, like a fire singing to itself. You close your eyes and imagine the rhythm of it, the clink of wooden cups, the soft shuffle of wool socks on wood, the creak of the roof as snow slides off in heavy sheets. All around you, life hums quietly beneath the frost's heavy hand. Historians still argue whether vodka helped or harmed those who depended on it. Some say it numbed them to hardship. Others believe it gave them strength to keep going. But maybe that debate misses the point. Maybe the truth lies in the in-between, in the small moments when a sip of something burning reminded you that you were still alive. You feel the heat rise through your chest again. Soft and steady. The world outside may be made of ice. But inside, it feels almost bearable. You exhale slowly, watching your breath mingle with the smoke. The father raises his cup one last time before sleep. His voice is hoarse, but his eyes gleam in the dim firelight. To warmth, he says softly, and to waking up. Everyone nods. They drink. Then silence returns. The last logs settle in the stove. A low sigh filling the room. You lie down again, the fur heavy on your body. The faint burn of vodka still glowing in your veins. The wind outside moans, but you barely hear it now. You're cocooned in warmth, laughter, and the remnants of a story. And as your eyes close, you think, sometimes, the line between faith and fermentation is thinner than you'd expect. The wind is whispering again. It slips between the cracks in the wood, sighing like something alive and ancient, neither friend nor foe. Just a reminder that nature never really sleeps. You lie still, wrapped in furs and the fading glow of the stove. And listen, there's a strange beauty to it. The kind of sound that could lull you to sleep or make you believe ghosts are walking outside. In medieval Russia, people feared the wind almost as much as they depended on it. They said it carried voices, the murmurs of ancestors, warnings from saints, or sometimes the laughter of frost demons playing in the snow. On nights like this, when the world was wrapped in endless white and silence, you could almost believe it. The sound feels less like weather and more like a presence. You breathe in slowly, and the air tastes faintly of smoke and ash. The warmth from the stove is fading now, replaced by a cooler rhythm that brushes against your skin. Somewhere near the window, the frost is growing new veins across the glass, thin and intricate as lace. The house groans quietly under the pressure of the cold. The mother stirs first. She moves softly, adding another log to the stove. Sparks leap up, painting her face in amber light. For a moment, she seems like a priestess tending to her sacred flame. Everyone else is still asleep, the father, the children, the grandmother, all curled together like a single creature made of breath and dreams. You close your eyes and imagine the world beyond the walls. Snow dunes rise like frozen oceans. Trees bow under their icy crowns. Somewhere out there, wolves are calling to each other, long, drawn-out howls that blend with the moaning wind. To some, it would sound terrifying. To them, it's just another verse in the lullaby of winter. You can feel it, the contrast between that wild, merciless world and this tiny bubble of warmth. It's like the house itself is a small heartbeat in the chest of the frozen earth, thudding softly, stubbornly refusing to stop. People back then didn't take nights like this for granted. Every dawn was a victory. Every sleep a small act of rebellion against the cold. You think about that as you listen to the storm murmur outside, its voice rising and falling like a tired sea. It's hypnotic, the kind of sound that pulls you inward. And yet, there's something oddly comforting in its persistence. The wind never really stops, it only changes tone. Sometimes it sings, sometimes it wails, sometimes it whispers your name. You smile to yourself, half amused, half unnerved. Historians have found old Russian folk charms meant to ward off wind spirits. People used to hang dried herbs above doors, sprinkle salt near windows, or whisper little rhymes before bed to keep the icy voices away. They didn't do it out of superstition alone. It was a way to feel in control, to tame the untamable. When you live in a world ruled by forces bigger than you, even small rituals feel like shields. The grandmother shifts under her blanket, muttering in her sleep. Maybe she's dreaming of something long gone, green fields, the smell of rain, the warmth of summer bread. The kind of dreams you cling to when the world outside forgets what color is. You find yourself thinking how strange it must have been, living with that kind of silence. In modern life, there's always noise, machines, traffic, voices, hums. But here, the only sounds are the wind and the slow exhale of the fire. It's the kind of quiet that doesn't just fill your ears, it fills your thoughts. It forces you to face yourself. You pull the fur closer, pressing it against your cheek. It's cold now, but it smells familiar, like smoke, hay, and something faintly sweet, maybe from the bread they baked earlier. The texture scratches slightly, but you don't mind. It's real, grounding. The fire crackles, snapping the spell for a moment. A single ember drifts upward, glowing red before vanishing into the dark. The mother hums softly, not to anyone in particular, just to the night, maybe to remind it that she's still here. It's a simple sound, a melody without words, and yet, it weaves perfectly with the whispering wind. The two merge, human voice and nature's breath, into something ancient and calm. You lie there, eyes half closed, listening. The wolves are distant now, their howls fading into the vastness. The wind lowers its voice to a sigh. The house exhales too, its wood relaxing as the temperature shifts slightly with the dawn's faint promise. You realize this symphony of breath, crackle, hum, and whisper, is the soundtrack of survival. No instruments, no language, just sound and warmth and the quiet agreement between life and winter. Outside, the first faint light is beginning to seep through the frost-covered window. You can't see the sun yet, but you know it's there, somewhere beyond the endless white. And as you drift back towards sleep, the wind outside seems to murmur one last thing, soft enough that only half your mind hears it. You are small, but you are warm, and that is enough. By now, you've almost stopped noticing the snow. It's everywhere, on roofs, in the air, on your eyelashes. The world is white and endless. And the silence feels so heavy it might fall on you too. Yet in the middle of all that cold stillness, you see it. A cluster of wooden houses pressed together like a family huddling for warmth. This is the village, the true heart of Russia's survival in winter. Here, the cold is not an enemy but a familiar guest. And here, people have learned something simple but profound. Warmth multiplies when it's shared. You walk between the houses, hearing the crunch of snow under your boots. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, dark against the pale sky. The air smells of pine and bread and something sweet, maybe dried berries simmering in honey. Beneath it all, there's the faint, ever-present hum of wood crackling in stoves. It's the sound of life continuing, one log at a time. In one of the cottages, a door opens, and laughter spills out, bright, sudden, real. You step closer. Inside, the room is full of people, neighbors, cousins, friends, all gathered around the same fire. The walls are lined with fur coats and wool shawls drying from the morning's frost. The stove radiates heat, and everyone gravitates toward it like planets circling a sun. This is what villagers called the blanket of the village, not an object, but a way of living. When the nights grew too cold, people didn't stay apart. They gathered in one home, sometimes 2 or 3 families together. They'd eat, tell stories, sing, and sleep side by side on the floor or benches, wrapped in shared quilts and laughter. You watch as a young boy offers a steaming cup of broth to an old man who's just come in from the snow. The man's face is cracked with cold, his beard white with frost. But when he sips, his eyes close in relief. Around him, voices rise, soft at first, then louder, a tangle of talk and teasing and warmth. A woman hums a tune, the same one her grandmother probably sang. The children mimic her, off-key but happy. The air inside the cottage feels thicker somehow, dense with breath, smoke, and shared comfort. Historians often marvel at this communal instinct, calling it the foundation of Russian endurance. It wasn't just kindness, it was survival logic. A single fire can't heat a dozen homes. But it can warm a dozen hearts if they're all in one room. Heat, laughter, and stories, these were their fuel. You take a seat near the stove, and immediately, someone hands you a bowl of stew. It's simple: potatoes, cabbage, a hint of salt, but it's perfect. Steam curls upward, fogging your vision for a moment, and in that soft blur, you realize how beautiful this simplicity is. A boy beside you grins. Our stove sleeps less than we do, he says proudly. Everyone laughs, even the grandmother, her shawl wrapped tight around her head, chuckles as she stirs a pot. That's how we keep the frost away. She adds, we talk louder than it does. You smile. It's true. Every sound in this room, the laughter, the chatter, the scrape of spoons, feels like a small rebellion against the silence outside. The storm might rage all night, but here, noise is proof of life. Someone begins a story, and the room quiets. It's about a boy who went into the woods and found a talking wolf. One who promised warmth in exchange for a promise never broken. The details don't matter. What matters is the way the story fills the space. The flicker of fire paints faces with light and shadow. The storyteller's voice weaving through the air like a spell. When the story ends, everyone sighs, smiling. Then, one by one, people begin to settle. The old man leans against the wall. The children curl up by their parents. And someone throws another log onto the fire. The light flares, then softens, wrapping the room in a quiet orange glow. You realize how fitting it is, how the entire village, by gathering like this, becomes one great living organism. Each breath feeds the air. Each flame feeds the warmth. Each heartbeat adds to the rhythm of survival. Together, they create something larger than any single person could sustain alone. There's an old Russian saying, a shared blanket never feels small. You understand it now. In this place, in this moment, it doesn't matter how cold the night gets or how long the snow falls. The warmth is real, and it's enough. Outside, the wind rises again, brushing against the walls, but inside, the house holds steady. The laughter lingers in the air even after voices fade. Someone snores softly, someone murmurs in their sleep, and the fire crackles on. You close your eyes, feeling the heat on your face. The stove hums like a lullaby. And you think, maybe the real fire isn't in the hearth at all, but in the people themselves. The frost can wait outside. In here, winter doesn't win. By morning, the storm has passed, leaving behind a silence so complete it almost hums. The snow outside glitters under the weak sun, an unbroken sheet of silver white stretching as far as the eye can see. When you open the door, the air that rushes in is so sharp it makes your teeth ache. You breathe in slowly, and the first thing you notice is the smell, clean, ancient, and threaded with something faintly sweet. Birch smoke. It curls from chimneys all across the village, rising in graceful ribbons that twist into the pale sky. The scent is unmistakable, soft and woody, with a sweetness that clings to your clothes and hair. It's the smell of every winter morning, every meal cooked, every night survived. It's home. You step outside fully now, boots crunching through the snow. The frost bites your cheeks, but the air feels alive. From every direction, small plumes of smoke rise from wooden roofs. And for a moment, It looks like the whole village is exhaling at once, hundreds of quiet breaths meeting the sky. The father waves to you from behind a pile of logs. He's chopping firewood, the axe biting into frozen birch with dull, rhythmic thuds. Each strike sends a puff of white dust into the air. You can see the muscles in his arms tense with every swing. His breath visible in short bursts. "Good wood," he says when he notices you watching. "Birch burns bright, doesn't betray you." He's right. Birch was sacred here. Russians said it was a tree of kindness, strong enough to endure winter, gentle enough to give warmth without smoke that chokes. Even its bark was useful, for writing, for medicine, for kindling. Entire lives could be built from birch. You pick up a small piece, running your fingers over the papery bark. It's pale as moonlight, with faint silver streaks that shimmer when they catch the sun. You can smell the sweetness even before it burns. The father tosses another log into the sled. "My father chopped from the same grove," he says, "and his father before him." Birch doesn't just heat the house. It remembers the family. There's something deeply human about that. The idea that even firewood carries memory. You look toward the horizon, where a stand of birch trees rises from the snow. Their trunks slim and straight, their bark glowing faintly against the blue-gray light. They look fragile, but they've been standing here for centuries. Inside, the mother has already stoked the stove. The birch logs hiss as they catch, then settle into a steady crackle. The smell deepens, warm, sweet, clean. It fills every corner of the house. Clinging to wool and hair and skin, you sit near the fire, closing your eyes, letting it wrap around you. The grandmother, who's seen more winters than anyone, inhales deeply and smiles. "That's the scent of life," she says. "If I wake and don't smell it, I think I've died." You laugh, and she chuckles too, the sound rough but bright. Then she adds, half serious, "The frost doesn't come inside when birch burns. It respects it." Outside, the father's axe continues its steady rhythm. Inside, the room glows gold. The children run in from the cold, cheeks red, boots dripping snow. The mother scolds them lightly, brushing frost from their hats. They giggle and crowd near the stove, holding their hands out to the heat. You can feel how the whole day revolves around that smell, that warmth. Birch smoke isn't just fuel, it's atmosphere, identity, heartbeat. It ties the people here to the land itself. Historians sometimes write about how Russian peasants measured wealth not in coins, but in firewood. A poor man with a full woodpile was rich in ways a noble could never understand. Birch was life insurance, inheritance, and comfort all in one. The father enters again, stamping the snow from his boots. He looks proud and tired. "Enough for 3 days," he says. "If the storm comes again, we'll be ready." The mother pours him tea. And as he drinks, the steam mixes with the scent of birch, the two blending into something impossibly familiar. You realize it's the smell of survival, the signature of every winter that didn't win. Outside, the snow shifts softly under the sunlight. The trees in the distance stand motionless, their bare branches catching light like silver veins. You think of how many generations have smelled this same smoke, felt this same warmth, looked out at this same endless white. It's humbling, in a way. Fire, frost, wood, breath, the same ancient dance. repeated every century. The grandmother adds another log to the stove, and sparks leap briefly, gold against the dimness. She watches them rise, her eyes reflecting their glow. "See," she says quietly, "that's what we are, a spark in the smoke. But while we burn bright." You smile, letting her words settle into the soft hum of the fire. Outside, the smoke rises higher, twisting into the pale sky like a hymn the earth never forgot. The scent lingers in your hair, your clothes, your memory. It will follow you long after you leave this village. Because some kinds of warmth never truly fade. By evening, the birch smoke has thinned to a soft haze, drifting lazily through the air like a memory that refuses to leave. The sky is already dark again. Winter days here are brief, almost shy, as if the sun itself is too cold to linger. The world outside seems quiet, but not dead. If you listen closely, you realize it's never truly silent out there. The snow talks. You step outside for a moment, drawn by curiosity. The first thing you hear is the faint crunch beneath your boots. Crisp and rhythmic. Then, as you stand still, holding your breath, the world begins to murmur back. The wind moves through the trees, brushing the bare birch branches so gently that they clink together like tiny bells. The snow shifts under its own weight, sighing as drifts collapse and settle. Far away, ice cracks over the surface of a frozen river, a deep, echoing sound that feels alive, like the earth stretching in its sleep. They called it the breathing of winter. In medieval Russia, people believed the snow wasn't lifeless but full of whispers, messages from spirits, ancestors, or the land itself. You were supposed to listen, not fear it. Children were told that if they pressed an ear to the snow at night, they might hear voices, the laughter of foxes, the sighs of rivers, even the songs of those long gone. You crouch down and do exactly that. The cold seeps through your knees instantly, biting, but you ignore it. You lean close, and there it is, the faint hum of wind moving beneath the crust of snow. Soft and secret, as if the world is whispering to itself. It's beautiful, and a little eerie. You pull back slowly, exhaling a cloud of white breath into the darkness. Behind you, the door creaks open. The grandmother's voice floats out, low and amused. "Listening to the old ones?" she asks. "They talk too much this time of year." You smile. "What do they say?" She shrugs. "Depends. Some say they're warning us. Some say they're remembering. Some just like to gossip." Her eyes glint with the same mischief as the firelight. "But if you hear your name in the snow, you must answer kindly. The winter spirits have long memories." You laugh, but softly. Out here, laughter feels like something you borrow, not own. The night listens too closely. She joins you outside for a moment, pulling her shawl tight. Together, you stand in the moonlight, watching the snow drift lazily across the roofs. The stars above look faint, smothered by frost. The cold air hums faintly in your ears, a frequency you can't name but somehow feel. "You see," the grandmother says, "the snow isn't empty. It holds everything we've ever said to it." She bends down, scoops a handful into her palm, and lets it fall slowly back to the ground. It remembers. There's a kind of poetry in that thought. You imagine generations before her doing the same, standing in this same stillness, listening to the same whispers, hoping the snow would carry their words somewhere warmer. A dog barks in the distance, muffled by the drifts. Then, nothing again, only the slow, deliberate rhythm of the world breathing. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine that you can hear not just the snow, but the heartbeat of everything hidden beneath it: seeds, roots, rivers, waiting, sleeping, not dead. Historians rarely write about this side of winter. They record the famine, the disease, the survival, but they forget the strange intimacy of it, the way people felt connected to the land when it was frozen. How silence itself became a kind of conversation. The grandmother pats your arm and nods toward the house. "Enough listening for tonight," she says. "The snow will still be talking tomorrow." You follow her inside, and the warmth hits like a soft wall. The fire greets you instantly, crackling with the joy of being alive. The air smells of smoke and bread again, and you realize how deeply those scents belong together. The mother is mending something near the stove, the children already half asleep, their faces flushed with heat. The father sits polishing an axe blade, his movements slow, meditative. Every person seems to hum with quiet purpose, a small part of the same whole. You sit back down near the fire, letting the warmth thaw your fingers. Outside, the snow continues to fall, soft, relentless, and full of voices. You wonder what it's saying now. Maybe it's talking about this house, these people, the little light that glows through their window. Maybe it's whispering, "They're still here, still burning, still breathing." You smile at the thought. The grandmother hums again, low and slow, a tune that seems to blend with the wind outside. You close your eyes, and for a heartbeat, you can't tell which sound comes from the living and which from the snow. And maybe that's the secret. Out here, in the land of endless frost, the line between the two was never meant to be clear. The morning comes slowly again, dim and colorless. The snow outside has deepened overnight, soft dunes that have swallowed the fences, the paths, even the outlines of the barns. The world looks erased and rewritten in white. For most people, it would be a warning to stay indoors. But not everyone in medieval Russia had that choice. The sound of movement breaks the silence, the creak of a cart, the muffled clop of hooves, the sharp jingle of iron harness bells. Somewhere down the frozen road, travelers are passing through, dark shapes against the pale horizon, bundled in furs, their breath rising in plumes of fog. You can almost hear the frost crunching under the runners of their sled. The villagers step outside to watch. Strangers were rare in winter, the roads were dangerous, and every journey was a wager against death. But trade, faith, or necessity still drove people to move, even when the cold seemed eager to claim them. The father shades his eyes, peering into the white glare. "Merchants, maybe," he murmurs, "or pilgrims. Poor fools." He's not wrong. The road ahead looks endless and cruel. You can barely see where it leads, just a thin gray line vanishing into the snowfields. The air shimmers faintly with cold, the kind that bites through even the thickest coat. As the sled approaches, you can see their faces, 3 travelers, pale and hollow-eyed, wrapped so tightly they barely look human. Their beards are frozen stiff, their lashes coated in ice. The oldest of them gives a nod of greeting, though his lips are too cold to shape words. The villagers wave back silently. There's no need for conversation. The look in their eyes says everything. We're still alive. They stop for a moment near the edge of the village. The horses snort, steam bursting from their nostrils like twin clouds. The travelers' clothes are crusted white with frost. Even their leather gloves gleam stiffly in the light. One of them climbs down, legs shaking, and asks softly for water. The grandmother hurries forward with a bucket, though she knows what they'll find inside: ice. She laughs wryly, cracking it with an axe. "There," she says, "we share what the frost doesn't steal first." They smile faintly. It's enough. As they drink, you can see their hands tremble. Their eyes dart toward the warmth of the houses, the smoke curling from chimneys. The temptation to stay must be enormous. But travelers can't linger long in winter. The roads close quickly here, swallowed by storms that rise without warning. Historians often wrote of these travelers, merchants, monks, wanderers, exiles, who crossed the Russian lands even in the cruelest seasons. Some were desperate, others devout, some foolish. Many never returned. The snow kept their secrets. Villagers told stories of frozen carts found in spring, horses still standing, reins frozen in place, their riders sitting silent and upright, staring at nothing. The father invites the travelers inside for a short rest. They hesitate, then accept. You follow them in. The door shuts behind you, and the air instantly feels heavy and alive again, the warmth of the stove wrapping around everyone like a second skin. The travelers stand awkwardly near the fire, afraid to come too close too quickly. If you warm frost-bitten skin too fast, it cracks like ice. The mother pours them tea, the steam rises in gentle curls, and you can see them close their eyes as they breathe it in, as if inhaling life itself. One of them finally speaks, voice hoarse. "The road ahead is gone," he says. "Snow took it last night. We followed the moon instead." The grandmother nods, unsurprised. "The snow eats what it pleases," she says, "but the moon never lies." You imagine it: 3 men, lost in the white wilderness, steering by a faint silver glow, trusting their lives to a light that offers no heat. It's both madness and faith. And somehow, you understand both. They stay long enough for the feeling to return to their fingers. Then they thank the family, bowing deeply before stepping out again. The father hands them a small bundle, bread wrapped in cloth. A gift that might mean the difference between life and death. When the door closes behind them, the silence returns. The family gathers at the window, watching as the sled vanishes slowly into the white horizon, swallowed by distance and snow. The grandmother crosses herself. "May the road remember their names," she whispers. Outside, the world looks the same as it did before, blank, pure, merciless. You find yourself thinking about how fragile travel must have felt back then, when every journey was a gamble with the elements. Yet still, people went, for trade, for faith, for love, or sometimes, just because staying still felt harder than freezing. You step closer to the window. The horizon is empty now, but in the faint wind, you swear you can still hear the distant jingle of their bells, a small, bright sound swallowed slowly by snow. Historians like to say the medieval Russians were stoic because they had no choice. But maybe it wasn't stoicism. Maybe it was something deeper, an understanding that the world is never conquered, only endured, that every step on frozen ground is a kind of prayer. The grandmother stirs the fire again, and the house fills with the smell of birch smoke once more. The mother hums. The father sits in silence, staring into the flames. Outside, the snow keeps falling, covering footprints, smoothing roads, erasing lines. It's as if the world itself prefers forgetfulness. But not you. You remember. You can still hear the faint echo of iron bells, fading into eternity, like a heartbeat beneath the snow. By midday, the snow has slowed again. The light outside is pale and forgiving, and the house hums quietly with the familiar rhythm of daily survival. The stove breathes warmth like a living thing. The air smells of wood, wool, and something richer today, bread. You can hear the sound before you see it, the soft thump of dough meeting wood, the rustle of flour scattering, the low hum of a song that has no words. The mother stands at the small table, sleeves rolled up, her hands buried in a pale mound of dough. Her movements are slow but sure, practiced through countless winters. Each turn, each fold, is done with purpose. Bread wasn't just food here, it was faith you could touch. In medieval Russia, a warm loaf meant everything: comfort, survival, hospitality. It was said that if a home smelled of bread, the frost itself would hesitate before entering. You watch her work. The dough sighs softly as she presses it down, a rhythm almost like breathing. The grandmother sits nearby, sifting flour, her wrinkled hands moving with quiet precision. The children peek from behind the stove, giggling at the way the mother's cheeks flush from the heat. Even the father, sharpening a blade near the door, glances up occasionally, smiling to himself. The room is full of small sounds: flour dusting wood, the hiss of the stove, the slow whistle of the samovar. The mother hums as she works, the same tune the grandmother always hums when spinning or sewing. You realize it's more than habit, it's a kind of spell. Every song, every movement, keeps the rhythm of warmth alive. She shapes the dough into rounds, setting each one gently near the fire to rise. The smell deepens, sweet and yeasty, spreading through the house like sunlight you can taste. The children can't help themselves, they drift closer, noses twitching. Not yet, she warns with a smile. Patience makes bread strong. That line feels like a proverb. Maybe it is. Everything in this world seems to carry wisdom disguised as ordinary talk. Historians write that Russian households baked bread only once or twice a week, carefully rationing their flour through the long winter months. But when they did, it was an event. Neighbors might stop by, drawn by the smell alone. Bread wasn't just for eating, it was for sharing. And as if on cue, there's a knock at the door. A neighbor stands there, cheeks red, snowflakes clinging to her scarf. She's holding a small jar, pickled mushrooms, a gift in exchange for whatever's baking. The mother laughs, wipes her hands on her apron, and waves her inside. Soon the two women are talking, their voices overlapping like a warm conversation between fires. The father moves aside to make room, and the children sit by the window, tracing shapes into the frost. The smell of bread continues to rise, thick and golden. When the first loaf finally comes out, it's perfect, crust browned, edges split, steam rising in lazy curls. The mother sets it on the table, and for a moment, no one speaks. Everyone just watches. breathing in that miracle of flower, fire, and patience. The grandmother crosses herself before breaking off the first piece. She dips it in salt, a gesture as old as the land itself, and hands it to the father. He takes it reverently, as if accepting something holy. Then he smiles and passes it to the children, who tear it apart with small, eager hands. Bread and salt, the grandmother says softly, for peace, for health, for another day. You take a bite too. The crust crackles under your teeth, the inside is soft, steaming, almost sweet. It's simple, just flour, water, and salt, but it tastes like triumph. Every grain of it feels earned. The neighbor laughs as she eats, telling a story about a fox stealing a chicken from her yard. The grandmother shakes her head, muttering that foxes are cleverer than priests. The father chuckles quietly, and even the mother laughs, her face flushed and bright. This is what warmth sounds like. Outside, the wind stirs again, pressing against the shutters, but the fire doesn't flinch. The smell of bread is too strong, the laughter too loud. For now, the house is untouchable. You realize that in this world, survival isn't just endurance, it's creation. The act of baking, of feeding, of giving, is a rebellion against the cold. The frost may rule the fields, but not the kitchen, not while there's bread. As the meal ends, crumbs scatter across the table. The children lick honey from their fingers, and the mother leans back with a satisfied sigh. The neighbor ties her scarf again, promising to return the favor when she bakes next. The grandmother gathers the last bit of crust into her palm and drops it into the fire. For the spirits, she murmurs, may they stay warm too. The flames leap briefly, gold and grateful. The smell of bread lingers long after the loaf is gone, twining with the smoke, clinging to the rafters. You lean back, closing your eyes, and think, if there's a heaven for humans, it must smell like this: birch smoke, bread, and something quietly, stubbornly alive. Evening again, the soft gray between day and night, when the sky looks like it's holding its breath. Outside, the snow has stopped falling, but the world still glows faintly from below, lit by the reflection of the moon on its endless white skin. The cold feels clean, sharper than ever, yet inside the little wooden house, a new warmth begins to grow, not from bread or tea, but from something older: stories. The fire in the stove crackles quietly, throwing shifting shapes across the walls. Everyone gathers close, their faces painted gold by the light. The grandmother sits in her usual place on the low bench beside the stove, shawl wrapped around her shoulders like a cloak. The children lean toward her, eyes wide, their hands tucked under their chins. Even the father and mother pause their chores, drawn in by the familiar rhythm that always begins the same way. Once, when the snow was deeper than memory, her voice is slow, deliberate, heavy with the weight of winter's past. The room falls still. The story she tells tonight is about the Frost King, a figure who walks through the woods at night, touching the trees with his silver fingers and freezing rivers with his breath. But he's not cruel, she says. He's lonely. He only freezes what he cannot hold. You can almost see him in your mind, a tall, thin shape moving between birches, his cloak made of starlight and his beard of mist. He wanders the forest, humming softly to himself, And when he finds a house with smoke rising from its chimney, he stops to listen to the laughter inside. Sometimes he smiles, sometimes he sighs. The grandmother's voice lowers, but he never comes where kindness lives. She says, because kindness burns hotter than fire. The children shiver a little, though not from fear. They love this story. The younger one whispers, "Does he come to our house?" The grandmother chuckles. "He passes by every night, but your laughter keeps him moving." The mother smiles at that, stirring the fire with the iron poker. The sparks jump like fireflies. And for a moment, you imagine each one is a word of the story escaping into the air. Stories like these weren't entertainment in medieval Russia, they were insulation. Each tale was another layer against the dark. Another way to remind the heart that warmth wasn't only physical. When the nights stretched too long and the frost whispered too close, words became the fire that didn't need wood. The father leans forward now, adding to the tale in his deep, steady voice. "Once, I saw the Frost King's trail," he says, eyes glinting, "a path through the woods where every branch was white as bone. But when I followed, it led me back home." The children gasp, thrilled. The grandmother nods approvingly. He shows the way to those who remember to listen. She says, "You realize that in this house, everyone is both listener and storyteller." The walls themselves seem to lean closer, as if they've heard it all before and still want to hear it again. The fire dances, the shadows move, and suddenly, the tiny room feels infinite, like all the winters of history are gathered here, warming their hands by this same flame. Historians sometimes say that Russia survived its harsh centuries because of endurance. But listening now, you understand it was something else: imagination. The ability to weave wonder into suffering, to turn the frozen world into a living myth, to make meaning out of frost. The grandmother continues, her voice rising and falling with the crackle of the fire. The story shifts, to wolves who speak, to stars that listen, to a girl who saves a village by sharing her last piece of bread with the wind itself. Each tale feels like it belongs not to her, but to the fire, the flame using her voice to speak. The children's eyes grow heavy. The father leans back, arms folded. The mother hums under her breath, adding a rhythm to the tale without even realizing it. You feel your own heartbeat slow to match theirs. The grandmother's final words drift out like smoke, and so, every winter night, the Frost King keeps walking, but where he hears laughter, he leaves a star behind. The fire pops softly, like punctuation. The children sigh in their sleep, dreaming of frozen kings and glowing stars. The grandmother sits back, smiling faintly. The mother places a log into the stove, and the flames flare once more, painting the old woman's face in orange light. "You still tell it well," the father says quietly. "Stories," she replies, "don't grow old. They just wait until the next fire." You sit there for a long moment, listening to the sound of burning wood and slow, even breathing. The house smells of smoke, honey, and rest. Outside, the wind brushes against the walls, but softly, as if it, too, is listening. You close your eyes, and in the dark behind your eyelids, the Frost King walks through his silent forest. You picture him stopping by the house, watching the faint orange glow behind the window. You imagine him smiling before moving on, leaving a trail of silver in the snow. Inside, the fire keeps telling its story, low, steady, eternal. And you realize something beautiful. Warmth isn't only what you feel, it's what you share. And what you remember. The days begin to stretch. Almost imperceptibly at first, the light lasts a few minutes longer. The snow's glare softens from silver to gold. And somewhere deep beneath the frozen earth, something stirs. It's not spring yet, far from it, but you can sense a change. The kind you can't quite name, only feel. Inside the house, the stove still burns, but the rhythm has shifted. There's less desperation in the way the father feeds the fire. Less urgency in the mother's hands as she folds the quilts. Even the grandmother hums slower, softer, as if she knows the cold's grip is loosening. You step outside, and the air feels different. Still sharp, still biting, but it carries a faint dampness now. A whisper of melt, somewhere nearby. Water is moving, slowly, reluctantly, like a forgotten memory returning to life. You follow the sound, boots crunching through the thinning snow, until you find it. A small crack in the ice where a trickle of water glints in the sunlight. It's the sound of thawing. The villagers always said that this was the earth's sigh of relief, the first breath after months of holding still. You crouch down and listen. It's faint, but it's music, a thin, persistent drip 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 echoing through silence. You can almost imagine the land itself waking up, rubbing frost from its eyes. Behind you, a voice calls. The father is out now, chopping the last of the winter's firewood. Hear that? He says, smiling. The world's starting to leak again. You laugh. It's such a small thing, a crack, a sound, but it feels miraculous. The air smells different too, less smoke, more life. The cold no longer tastes like iron. It carries a hint of wet soil, of sap, of things that remember how to grow. A bird, one single, brave bird, calls out from somewhere in the birches. Its note thin but triumphant. It feels absurdly heroic. Back inside, the grandmother nods knowingly when you mention it. Every sound means something, she says. That's the river calling to the roots. Time to wake up. The mother opens a window just a crack to let in some of the new air. The chill sweeps through the house instantly. But it feels clean. The children squeal, pretending to shiver dramatically, while she laughs and shuts it again. The air inside feels fresher now. Alive. Historians often describe this shift as the hardest time of all, the in-between. When food stores ran low. When roads turned to mud. When illness crept in with the melting ice. And yet, in every account, there's also relief. Even hardship was easier to bear when the sound of water returned. It meant the world still remembered how to move. You sit near the window, watching the light reflect off the snow. Drops of melt slide slowly from the roof, falling like tiny glass beads. Each one lands with a faint plink, a sound so delicate it feels precious. The grandmother murmurs something from her corner. Every drop is a promise. She says, the cold never wins forever. You think about how long this house, this family, this whole land has lived by that truth. Centuries of winters, each one different yet the same. The frost always comes to claim everything. And still, every year, it fails. The father finishes his work and comes inside. Snow melting from his boots in little puddles by the door. The mother hands him a cup of tea, steam rising in golden ribbons. He drinks it slowly, looking at the window, where droplets now run like tears down the frost. Soon, he says quietly, we'll hear the river again. Outside, the air darkens with evening, but the light lingers just a little longer than yesterday. You can feel something loosening in your chest, a tension you didn't realize was there. Maybe the earth isn't the only thing thawing. The grandmother tends to the stove one last time before bed, her hands moving slowly, tenderly, as if she's saying goodbye to an old friend. Rest now, she murmurs to the fire. You've done well this winter. The flames flicker, listening. That night, as you lie beneath your quilt, you hear it again, the faint drip of melting snow outside. Steady and calm, the house creaks softly, the air smells less of smoke, and you realize the world is already changing in its sleep. You close your eyes and think of rivers still frozen, waiting to break open, of seeds buried deep, waiting for warmth. Everything, it seems, is waiting, but now, the waiting feels lighter. Because when the snow begins to whisper and the earth begins to thaw, even the coldest heart remembers, nothing frozen stays still forever. The next morning begins with light, real light, not the weak, gray suggestion that winter usually offers, but a soft golden shimmer spilling through the cracks in the shutters. When you open them, the world nearly blinds you. The snow has started to melt in patches. And where it hasn't, it gleams like glass. The whole landscape looks alive again, reflecting the sky in every direction. The frost, for months a tyrant, now becomes an artist. Puddles of thawing ice shimmer like mirrors, catching fragments of sun and scattering them across the ground. The birch trunks glow white as bone, their bark peeling in curls. The snow on rooftops has begun to slide, collapsing in gentle waves with a muffled whump, like the exhale of a sleeping beast. You stand at the window, watching the light dance over the fields. The cold is still there, it will be for weeks, but it's losing its edge. It no longer feels eternal. You can smell the faint dampness of the earth beneath the snow. That deep, loamy scent of things preparing to live again. Inside, the house stirs more easily. The mother hums as she sweeps the floor. The sound of her broom against the boards seems lighter than before. The children are restless, their laughter louder. Even the grandmother, usually slow and deliberate, moves with a little more energy, pausing often to look out the window as if confirming that yes, the light is truly back. The father returns from outside, his boots wet, his beard shining with droplets instead of frost. He grins. The ice on the well broke this morning, he says, holding up a bucket sloshing with water. It's clear as glass now. The grandmother nods, smiling faintly. When the well wakes, the village does too. You follow him outside, drawn by curiosity. The air smells different today, like sunlight on metal. Like hope, the snow crunches wetly beneath your feet. And for the first time, you hear the faint trickle of running water from somewhere beyond the trees. It's not loud, but after so many months of silence, it's enough to make your heart ache. At the well, you look down into the bucket. The water reflects the sky perfectly. A blue so deep it looks like a hole to another world. Your reflection wavers there, pale, ghostly, surrounded by light. You realize how strange it must have felt centuries ago, To see your face again after months without clear water or mirror glass. That's what the villagers used to say, when the ice turns to mirrors. The soul remembers itself. You bend closer. The air above the well feels warmer, though the rim is still edged in white crystals. A drop of meltwater slides from the roof and lands in the bucket with a soft plink. The rings ripple outward, breaking your reflection into pieces, then slowly coming back together again. In the distance, you hear the sound of a cart moving down the road, the first in months. The bells on its harness jingle faintly, a reminder that travel is possible again. Doors open, voices call across the village. It feels like a small resurrection. Inside the house, the fire burns lower than usual. The grandmother lets it fade a little, smiling as she does. "The sun's helping us again," she says, rubbing her hands together. "The fire can rest." The light pouring through the windows paints gold across the table. The walls, the quilts, even the old icons on the shelf. The whole room glows. You realize that warmth doesn't just come from heat, it comes from color. From brightness. From the illusion of summer that light alone can bring. The children crowd by the window, pointing and laughing as the snow on the roof drips faster now. They've discovered something delightful. Each drop that falls catches a piece of sunlight and flashes like a gem before hitting the ground. It's like watching time melt. Historians often wrote about this part of winter, the slow surrender of frost, as if it were dull. A waiting game, but standing here, you can feel how alive it is. This is the season when the world shifts from surviving to becoming. Every sound, every droplet, every ray of light feels charged with relief. The father steps outside again, carrying the small iron pot that used to hold snow for melting. He tosses it aside with a grin. "Won't need that soon," he says. The mother laughs from the doorway, shaking her head. "You'll say that, and then the frost will hear you." The grandmother chuckles. "Let it. Even frost enjoys being defeated once in a while." Later, when night comes, the air remains soft, almost kind. The moon rises high, reflected perfectly in the puddles scattered across the yard. You walk out quietly, your breath still visible, though fainter now. The snow crunches differently beneath your boots, less brittle, more forgiving. You pause and look down. In every patch of ice, the moon stares back at you, bright, cold, endless. Dozens of tiny reflections, each trembling with movement, as if the world itself has learned to shimmer again. For a long moment, you stand there between darkness and light, between winter and what comes after. You can feel the balance, the earth shifting under its own frozen weight. Ready to release. The villagers are asleep now. The fire inside the house has dimmed to embers. But the glow of the moon is enough. You whisper to the night. Just once, softly. "Thank you for lasting." And the snow, melting around your boots, seems to whisper back. "Thank you for waiting." The next night feels different. Though at first you can't say why. The cold is still here. But it's gentler now, more like a memory than a presence. The sky is perfectly clear, painted in deep indigo, scattered with stars that look close enough to touch. You step outside, and for the first time in months, you hear dripping everywhere, the soft percussion of a world unfreezing. The villagers call this the last breath of winter. It's a fragile night, when frost still holds on out of pride. but even it knows the end has come. The air smells of wet earth and smoke. The roofs glisten under the moonlight, water trickling from their edges in thin silver lines. Every now and then, a clump of snow slides off with a soft thud, landing in the half-melted drifts below. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, then goes quiet again. Even the wind sounds tired, no longer sharp, just slow and restless. You walk toward the edge of the village, where the birch trees stand watching over everything like pale sentinels. Their bark glows faintly, luminous against the night. Drops of meltwater slide down their trunks, catching starlight as they fall. You can hear it now, the faintest crack and drip. The song of thawing wood. This is how the Russians marked the turning point, not with celebration, but with listening. They didn't declare the season over. They waited until the world itself said so. And tonight, it's speaking in whispers, small streams gurgling beneath the snow, ice breaking in hidden ponds, roofs sighing as they shed their winter skin. You look down and realize the snow no longer crunches under your boots, it gives. Soft and wet, you bend down and scoop a handful, watching it collapse between your fingers, leaving your palm damp but not frozen. The cold doesn't bite anymore. It lingers, uncertain, like a guest reluctant to leave. Behind you, a faint orange glow flickers through the windows of the houses. Inside, people are awake longer than usual, talking softly, unwilling to sleep through this quiet miracle. The grandmother sits near the window, her shawl pulled tight, watching the darkness with knowing eyes. She senses it too, the season turning. When you step back inside, the air feels heavier, full of steam and warmth. The stove hums softly, but the fire inside burns low, almost ceremonial now, as if it knows its long duty is nearly done. The mother pours the last of the tea, and the children yawn, leaning against her arms. The father sits by the door, carving something small from a piece of birch, his hands slow, steady, at peace. The grandmother looks up and smiles at you. The frost is leaving, she says, voice low. He's packing his silver cloak. You smile back. Will he return? Always, she replies, eyes soft, but not tonight. The children, half asleep, murmur something about the Frost King from her earlier story. The grandmother chuckles. Yes, yes, she says. He's walking north now. He'll visit the mountains, the forests, the rivers, but not us. Not for a while. The fire pops gently, and everyone falls quiet again. It's not an uncomfortable silence, it's full content. You can hear the faint sound of dripping outside. The world exhaling for the first time in months. Historians often wrote about this night, the Poslednyaya Moroznaya Noc, the last frost, as something between celebration and farewell. Families would sit together in the dim light, sharing whatever was left of their winter stores, listening to the sound of the thaw. Some even opened their doors briefly to let the cold out. A symbolic gesture of gratitude for having survived its rule. The father does that now, just for a moment. The door creaks open, and a thin breath of night air slides in. It smells of snow and soil, sharp and clean. Then he closes it again, sealing the warmth back inside. Goodbye, old friend, he says quietly, not to anyone in particular. The grandmother nods. He'll hear you. You all sit for a while longer, watching the last fire burn itself low. The room glows amber and red, shadows pulsing on the walls. The children fall asleep first, their heads resting on each other's shoulders. The mother hums softly, a tune that sounds like gratitude. Outside, the frost fades from the windows, melting in thin streams that glisten in the moonlight. For the first time since winter began, the glass is clear. You can see the stars unobstructed now, bright and patient, like old friends. You whisper a quiet thanks to the fire, to the frost, to the silence that kept you company. You think about how many generations have lived through this same night, feeling the same relief, hearing the same slow drip of melting snow. And you understand, the end of winter was never loud. It was quiet, reverent, full of breath and light. Not a victory, but a truce. You lie down beneath your quilt, which still smells faintly of smoke and honey. The grandmother's humming fades into the rhythm of the thaw outside. The fire sighs once, then sleeps. And as you drift toward dreams, you can almost hear the Frost King himself walking away, his footsteps soft, his voice fading into the wind, leaving only the echo of cold behind him. Rest now, he seems to say. You've earned the warmth that comes next. Morning arrives quietly, as if even the sun is afraid to disturb what's been hard won. The air feels softer, almost fragile, carrying the scent of water and earth. When you open the door, it's not snow that greets you, but sound, the slow, unsteady chorus of melting. Everywhere, the frost is retreating, the icicles hanging from the roof drop one by one, their fall marked by the faintest plink. You step outside and stop. The village looks transformed, not yet green, but trembling on the edge of color. The snow is thinning into patches, revealing hints of brown soil and old grass. Flattened but alive, the air feels wet, full of promise. A thin mist curls along the ground, rising like steam from a sleeping giant. The father is already outside, standing by the well. He lifts a bucket of water that gleams gold in the morning light. First clear draw, he says proudly, showing you the surface, pure, still, perfect. The mother comes out after him, a scarf over her hair, smiling in that quiet way people do when relief has replaced fear. The children follow, barefoot despite the chill, their laughter echoing through the open air. The grandmother stands in the doorway, watching. Don't run too far, she warns, though her voice carries no real worry. She knows what this day means. The last frost has passed, and the world is breathing again. You walk toward the birch grove beyond the village. The ground squelches under your boots. Every step releases the scent of thawing earth. Above you, branches drip steadily, their silver bark shining like veins of light. The snow that once buried everything has turned to mirrors again, puddles that hold the sky. You kneel and dip your hand into one. It's shockingly cold, but alive. The water runs between your fingers like time itself. Unstoppable, eternal. In the distance, you hear the first river breaking open. A deep crack echoes through the valley, followed by a rush, a low, rolling song of freedom. The villagers stop what they're doing to listen. The sound is unmistakable, the world moving again. The father closes his eyes and murmurs, "There she goes." The grandmother whispers something under her breath, half prayer, half poem. The ice sleeps, the water wakes, the earth forgives. You can feel it too, this forgiveness. The cold has done its part, now warmth takes over. It's not about victory, not about conquering nature, it never was. It's about coexistence, about endurance, about learning to rest when the world demands stillness, and to rise again when it softens. You glance back toward the village. Smoke no longer pours thickly from chimneys, it drifts lazily now. Faint and gray. Doors are open, quilts hang outside to breathe. The children chase each other through puddles, their laughter bright as the sky. Inside, the house feels lighter. The stove burns low, just for comfort now, not survival. The air smells faintly of damp wood and sunlight. The grandmother moves slowly through the room, touching each object, the pot, the chair, the icon, like she's greeting old friends who've made it through another year. Historians sometimes end their accounts here, calling it the thaw, as if that's the whole story. But what they miss is the intimacy of it, the quiet joy, the trembling gratitude that fills every heart. To live through winter was not simply to endure, but to witness rebirth. And tonight, for the first time in months, sleep will come easily. As dusk falls, the sky melts into gold and violet. The children are already yawning, even the father's voice sounds slower, softer. The grandmother hums again, the same tune she's sung all winter. But tonight, it sounds different, not mournful, but full. You lie beneath your quilt one last time. The window cracked open to let in the cool, wet air. You can hear the river in the distance, the soft breathing of the earth, the slow drip of water from the roof. Everything is in motion again, yet peaceful. And as your eyes grow heavy, the world seems to whisper around you, not with the hush of frost this time, but with the murmur of renewal. You made it, it says. You learned to sleep through the cold and dream in the dark. You remembered warmth even when none was left. The grandmother's voice floats through the dark, almost a lullaby. Sleep, child of winter. The snow is done speaking. The earth remembers your breath. Rest now, spring will keep watch. The fire hums one final note, fading into the rhythm of the night. The house breathes, the world softens, and you, wrapped in the warmth of all that endured, drifts slowly into peace. The frost king is gone. The rivers are awake, and tomorrow, the first green shoots will rise through the melting snow, reaching for the light that never truly left. End of script. Sweet dreams.